Hello, JOMAJ Studios here, and this is our original action fantasy adventure, The Fall of Nale, Episode 4. Almost 2 hours after the encounter with the Dark Unicorn, Jacob and Nathaniel reached the foot of the Hilarion Mountain. Now what? Impatiently asked Nathaniel. We climbed it. You don't have a problem with that now, responded Jacob, ensuring the knight was as capable of rock climbing as he was. No, not at all, lied Nathaniel, hiding the fact he had a slight fear of heights. Almost an hour later, Jacob eventually made it to the top of the mountain. There it is, the well that holds the mystic waters, said Jacob, pointing to a very ordinary-looking well, about 10 meters away from where he stood, as Nathaniel struggled to climb the last bit of the mountain. Then, out of nowhere, before Nathaniel could catch his breath, a giant prehistoric-looking bird bearing the colors of an eagle swooped down and knocked both warriors off their feet. Before he even understood the nature of his attacker, Jacob found himself holding on to Nathaniel, who was by now dangling off the cliff. Jacob looked back and spotted the giant bird flying towards him for another attack. Despite their cliff-hanging predicament, Jacob, thinking of only one solution, turned to the knight and shared it. I'm going to let go. What? Screamed out the knight, unable to see the fruit of Jacob's plan. But before he could get his say, Jacob let go of his hand, causing him to fall several feet before managing to hold on to a little ledge of the mountain. Meanwhile, back on top, Jacob stayed out of harm's way by moving around the mountain bird with his extraordinary agility. At one point, Jacob managed to throw his weapons into the well, giving the prehistoric-looking animal the opportunity to strike him to the floor with its wing. The bird, with the intent to snap Jacob in two with its beak, flew towards the dazed warrior. But taking the feathered foe by surprise, Nathaniel, fresh from reclimbing a quarter of the mountain, leaped onto the monster and drove its sword into its back, causing the creature to give out a loud cry of pain. Jacob, recovering from the giant bird's attack, retrieved his newly enchanted staff from the well. He then leaped up into the air and used it to shatter the skull of the vicious attacker. After watching the giant bird fall to the ground dead, both men wasted no time in dipping all their weapons and clothing into the waters of the mystic well. I don't believe you let go, complained Nathaniel as he put on his armor that was now enchanted. I hinted what my intention was before I dropped you, for I knew a simple warning would be more than enough to set off your survival instincts, explained Jacob, who then suddenly got an uneasy feeling. We must cover ground quickly, pointed out Jacob, as he and the knight prepared themselves to climb down the mountain, for he could somehow sense Aiden's joy at the awakening of Sorax. Nathaniel's eagerness to get off high ground gave him a couple of minutes head start over Jacob. As the knight's feet touched the ground, he was greeted with a strong wind, which, if not for his armor and clothing that were now touched by the Hilarion waters, would have thrown him violently to the ground. The wind, moving like it was alive, gathered itself into a large whirlwind, uprooted the nearby tree and flung it at the knight. Nathaniel, who had been using his hands as cover to prevent dust from flying into his eyes, just about managed to roll out of the way of the incoming tree. As he got to his feet, Nathaniel fell into hand-to-hand combat with the winged Hazellite, an athletically built Caucasian male wearing only a pair of brown peasant trousers. Nathaniel was well built and had mastered a fighting style that had cleverly combined the art of boxing and wrestling. However, the winged Hazellite not only controlled the wind, but the Hazellite moved like it as well. Nathaniel was no match for him, for after a 5-minute attempt, the knight was floored by his supernatural opponent. Witnessing Nathaniel's defeat, Jacob leaped at the Hazellite from 11 feet up the mountain with an aerial kick that struck the demonic being continuously across several meters. On the 8th meter, the Hazellite grabbed Jacob by the leg and threw him into the side of the mountain. Before the demonic being could follow up its counterattack, Nathaniel got to his feet and swung his sword at the Hazellite. Avoiding the knight's attack with a series of slick movements, the demonic being finally disarmed Nathaniel with a solid punch to his chest. As Nathaniel dropped to his knee in pain, the Hazellite kicked up the young knight's sword and began to pursue his original plan. Jacob, now fully recovered from the Hazellite's assault, flipped to his feet and sighted the demonic being approaching him with Nathaniel's sword. Jacob responded by drawing out his staff and displaying several artistic rotations before finally stopping in his combat stance. The Hazellite began its merciless attack, and despite the weight of the knight's sword, was still able to move as gracefully as Jacob did at an incredible speed. After a 15-minute battle between Jacob and the Hazellite, no one had the upper hand. The Hazellite's incredible strength and speed kept Jacob at bay, while Jacob's agility and impeccable combat skills kept the young warrior away from harm. Finally, Jacob found the opportunity he needed as the Hazellite took a powerful swing at him with Nathaniel's sword. Jacob jumped over the attack, at the same time striking his foe on the head with his newly enchanted staff. The Hazelite dazed by the attack began to get struck continuously by the noble warrior. Jacob, now having full advantage over the elemental fiend, struck the knight's sword out of its hand. Nathanael in turn caught his sword and decapitated the evil Hazelite as it staggered back. The evil being's body then turned into dust and flew off with a light breeze. That is the end of episode 4, but before we go, answer this episode's question. If Nathanael is a Christian, is it right he lied about his fear of heights? Refer to the Bible and give your answers via any of JOMAJ Studios' social media platform links, which can be found at jomajstudios.com. Like Water, The Next Age is now available on paperback and in ebook format via any Kindle device. Also, check out the JOMAJ Studio website, Twitter page, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube channel for the complete Like Water series and all other JOMAJ Studio features.